Happy New Year and welcome back to WD.
FM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. We're your hosts, Brie Bertolacini, Marketing Manager.
And Chris Mullen, Senior Marketing and Communications Coordinator at the Walt Disney Family Museum.
Well, happy New Year's to you, Chris. And how were your holidays? I did hear there might have been some Disney seasonal magic during your holiday break.
Yes, there was. Well, Happy New Year to you as well, Brie. I got a double dose last month. I went to Walt Disney World early last month with my family for my nearly annual pilgrimage. I always really treasure doing things like Carousel of Progress and People Mover, or Tomorrowland Transit Authority, as it's known over there, that we can't do at Disneyland anymore. Also visited my old college program work locations, Main Street USA at Magic Kingdom, where I worked parade audience control, and the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular show at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Then my family went down to Disneyland to celebrate Christmas. Nothing quite beats the original. How were your holidays?
Well, first of all, I am very jealous of your double dose of Disney, hitting the both coasts, Disneyland and Walt Disney World. And it wouldn't be an episode of WDFM if we didn't mention our past college program. I've noticed that's turned into like our little Easter eggs. I'm like, even in our interviews, we still managed to talk about it.
When we talk about the parks, it's our appeal to authority.
I know. We can't help ourselves. It was they're always such magical memories. I love going back down memory lane, and you actually got to walk down memory lane, especially walking down Main Street. That's for sure.
The lane of memories, yes.
Yeah.
The actual lane of memories.
Yeah, well, I love Disneyland during the holidays and especially during Christmas. It's my favorite time to visit. Didn't make it down this year. I just, spent some much needed time with family and mainly just knitted the entire time. So the only Disney magic was coming from Disney Plus from my TV at home.
There you go. That works.
Yeah, let's jump right in. Well, this month in January 2023, I can't believe it already, be our guest as we celebrate the new year with a month-long screening of Beauty and the Beast, the 1991 version. For information on screening times, visit our website, waltdisney.org/calendar to learn more and reserve your tickets. Tickets are available to all and are free for members and children ages 5 and under.
Speaking of Beauty and the Beast, Brie, did you happen to catch the Beauty and the Beast 30th anniversary show on ABC?
I did. It was so much fun. I really liked
So good.
like the mix of the animated and kind of live action Broadway. I thought that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I loved that. I didn't know there was going to be quite so much animation, which makes sense because it's the anniversary of the animated film. And I just love her as an artist. Bay Area's own her. As Belle. So that finale where they're singing Beauty and the Beast, I've now rewatched it several times. It's saved on my TV in the YouTube app, so I can just keep going back over and over to watch it.
And Paige O'Hara, voice of the original Belle, had a little cameo. So I loved seeing that. And also I think Alan Menken had a cameo as well. So original songwriter. And I love bringing the past to the present and kind of mixing those two for a wonderful celebration.
We have Spirit of the Season, a community art exhibition, and Chris Miller Kaleidoscope on view now through March 20th, 2023. They are free to view in our lower lobby and theater galleries.
Last month, when we chatted about these two special exhibitions that we have in our lower lobbies, we failed to mention that in Chris Miller Kaleidoscope, alongside his beautiful nature-inspired artwork, we have his horse saddle on view. This object actually used to be on view in our galleries next to the display with the Zorro saddle. And it's right next to Walt's Griffith Park bench. So as you're on your way to our big Gallery 9, it hasn't been on view for many years. So I'm just super excited to see it on display again for this exhibition.
As Tom Hanks as Walt in Saving Mr. Banks says, "Get on the horse, Pamela." It really is a beautiful saddle with a really sweet story behind it. Owen Pope and his wife Dolly were hired by Walt to acquire and train the horses and mules needed for Disneyland and lived on property as Disneyland's only residents. According to our co-founder, Diane Disney Miller, Owen Pope was a skilled saddle maker who made the miniature saddle and gave it to Walt as a gift for his first grandchild, Chris Miller. Walt brought it with him when he went to meet his grandson for the first time. This would have been another great pick for last month's Collections Clash theme of gifts.
So many gifts, and it's such a sweet gift. And I've been dying to tell this story for so long. I remember in the interview that Diane had with Pete Martin, we in our main episodes featuring the different films that Walt did, we always feature Pete Martin audio in them. Where we can, and there was this special conversation between Diane and Pete Martin where she talked about all the wonderful things Walt did to help out her and her husband Ron when they had their first child, Chris. And as we know, Walt was a fan of canned goods, especially canned chili. Well, according to Diane, she said that her father had bought them an entire supply of canned food, including canned hash, soup, cheese spreads. So Diane didn't have to go to the store and they could easily have something quick for dinner. And it really is such a sweet sentiment. However, Diane did follow that story up with the sad truth that Ron didn't eat canned food. So she donated most of it and didn't have the heart to tell her dad.
I wish I loved anything as much as Walt loved canned chili, Jello, and trains.
I know. It's so sweet. So, just what a loving father and grandfather Walt was. And that's what I think the museum does best. And that's where we really exemplify how Walt was as those special figures in people's lives and that personal touch to things that we're able to bring throughout our galleries.
Yes, yes, very much so. Now it is time to recap last month's Collections Clash results. The topic was gifts, and we covered some of the most interesting gifts at the Walt Disney Family Museum.
In the first round, it was between your pick of the Oscar bracelet. Good pick. Um, and my pick of the bronzed hat. And the bronze hat received 37% of the votes, and the Oscar bracelet won with 63%.
Round two featured my pick of the Autopia car and your pick of the miniature collection of William Shakespeare. The miniature collection received 39% of the votes, while the Autopia car won with 61% of the votes.
That was a landslide. In the final round, it was between your pick of Mickey Mouse merchandise and my pick of the Chamber Pot. The Chamber Pot received 31% of the votes, and in the biggest margin in this collections clash, the Mickey Mouse merchandise received 69% of the votes. So, congrats, Chris, on your landslide win, as she said very bitterly.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I won't let it go to my head. And thanks also to all the people who voted on our Instagram story, the people who voted for my choices and the people who voted incorrectly. You know, Bree, there's really one easy way that you can beat me in Collections Clash, and it's staring at you right in the face when you walk through Gallery 3. You have to pick Walt skis.
I know. There's going to be one time where I'm going to steal that pick from you. When is the appropriate topic? And yeah, I'll win for sure.
I believe in you. I believe in you.
Well, now it's time to get to this month's Collections Clash. Chris and I have a topic, and we will each pick 3 objects in the museum to square off. It'll be tough to fit in Walt skis this month, as the topic is the Disneyland model, the Disneyland of Walt's imagination, located in Gallery 9. We hear from guests all the time that they could stand and look at this model all day, and Chris and I have in preparation of today's clash.
Yes, Brie and I actually used to be stationed from time to time at the Disneyland model to make sure people don't drop their cell phones in, so it's fair to say we're very qualified for this month's segment. A little bit of history about the model before we begin with our picks. The model was commissioned by Diane Disney Miller for the Walt Disney Family Museum to help represent Disneyland during Walt's lifetime. Kerner Optical was a division of Industrial Light and Magic, the special effects company for Lucasfilm, in charge of the practical effects for films like Star Wars. The model was named the Disneyland of Walt's imagination. It doesn't represent one moment in time particularly, but an accumulation of all the different ideas that Walt had had for attractions that he either saw put into the parks during his lifetime or had approved concepts of prior to his passing.
Great. And well, Chris, since you won last month, you get to go first again.
Well, for my first pick, what other choice do I have? Give me the castle.
How can I compete against Sleeping Beauty's castle? Here's a preemptive congrats on winning this round, Chris.
Well, beyond being its most iconic and Instagrammable feature, unless you're counting the exterior of the temporarily closed Star Wars launch bay in the old Carousel of Progress theater building, mourning what used to be, like me, Sleeping Beauty Castle itself is just such a perfect representation of Disneyland. Disneyland opened in 1955. Sleeping Beauty opened in theaters in 1959 after being in production for 6 years and costing $6 million to produce. Walt had such faith in Disneyland's success, just as he had faith in the success of Sleeping Beauty as a film, that it made all the sense in the world for him to tie Disneyland's major landmark to a film that hadn't even been released yet. The film took a while and several theatrical releases to make a profit, but it has stood the test of time as a true Disney classic, just as Disneyland has. When the Disneyland model was being conceived for the museum, Disney executives and Imagineers wanted to contribute, so they digitally modeled and 3D printed Sleeping Beauty Castle. The rest of our model was made by Kerner Optical. After fabrication, the Imagineers gave a raw, meaning unpainted, unfinished, castle to Kerner, who then modified it to fit in the space and hand painted it themselves.
It truly is such the symbol of the iconic Disney park. Well, this collections clash, I am trying to be a bit more strategic with my picks, so we'll just see if this pans out. So I already know this is going to be your round, Chris. So I'm going to pick Walt's apartment. It is a winner in my eyes, and I know a lot of other people's, but it is more of a hidden gem at the parks.
See if this pans out. Why are your pans out? Are you cooking something?
Even for you, that's a low effort, Chris.
I guess you could say that joke was critically panned. Maybe we should pan over to your argument now about Walt's apartment.
Oh my gosh. Well, on the model, right above the town square firehouse, there is a flickering light in the window that depicts the light that stays on today in Walt's apartment at Disneyland. A little bit about Walt's special apartment. It was built so that Walt and his family could have a place to stay the night at Disneyland. Walt and Lillian worked together to design this apartment, and Lillian actually collected cranberry glass, and Victorian cranberry is the color that dominated the design of the apartment. According to Diane Disney Miller, quote, "Mother and Dad loved the Victorian period. It was the period they grew up in. But our home was not in that style. This was their little Victorian masterpiece." Which I just love that. And if you see photos of inside the apartment, it really is a little Victorian masterpiece. And today you can visit, select few people get the special privilege of visiting the apartment. And there's only a few original items left. One of those is the Regina music box. On display in our awards lobby, we do have original furniture that was in Walt's apartment. It is free to come and visit our awards lobby at the Walt Disney Family Museum, so you can see it yourself. And Disneyland staff would know that Walt was in the park if the lamp that faced out onto Main Street was on. So today, to show that Walt's spirit is still alive at Disneyland, they do have a replica lamp in the window that stays on to represent that. And we actually do have the original lamp in our collection. A little tooting of our own horn there. Well, fun fact about the model, the lights on the model are 150,000 hour LED lights. So we shouldn't have to worry about the light in Walt's apartment going out anytime soon. And if that does happen, our facilities team does have access below the model to make any repairs.
Now, question, can facilities install lights like that in my apartment? Asking for a friend. For round two, I'm saying all aboard because my second pick is the Disneyland Railroad.
That is a very, very good one. I like it.
I mean, what more do you need? Walt loved trains. End of explanation. Okay, here's some explanation. For the most part, the model is 1 and 187th scale. The Disneyland Railroad train is a functional N-gauge train that used to make grand circle tours around our model. By comparison, the Casey Jr. Circus train on the model is Z-gauge and cannot move. Another fun Walt's Trains facts about the model. The barn behind It's a Small World is a reference to Walt's Carolwood barn, where his earliest Imagineers, a collection of artists and machinists from the Walt Disney Studios, assembled his miniature train that ran around his home property. It never existed at the park and is meant only to be a creative use of extra space on the model and a nod to how Walt's love of trains impacted Disneyland's development. Walt's real-life Carolwood barn, currently in the Los Angeles Live Steamers Railroad Museum in Griffith Park, is an additional tribute to Walt.
I love that. I think throughout the Disneyland's inception and even throughout the museum, trains have always been such an integral part to Walt Disney's story. And the inception of Disneyland is also tied to a train. And I actually did get to see the train running around the model for a very short time. That it's always such a treat if you're able to see that. Chris, have you witnessed that?
I saw it being tested, but I never actually saw it run during the day. That was just before my time.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a real treat. And I know it is the bane of our facilities team's existence because it is very fickle because of it. What is it? What did you say? It was, was it an N gauge train? Yeah.
Yeah, N-gauge, which is one of the more common model train set sizes.
Yeah. But the tracks are just so fickle, but that's a great pick.
Yeah, and it also like just tells you how much of a feat it is to keep those running, keep the tracks clean, keep the cars from being derailed. When I go to Walt Disney World, like I just did, when I go through Epcot and stop at the Germany Pavilion, they have those miniature trains running outside on that little model, and they are always running, rain or shine, and I never see them derail. And knowing what I know now, having worked at the museum with the model trains that we've had on display, it just makes me that much more impressed at what it takes to actually keep those going. That is the real Disney magic there. Forget anything else in the park. It is the model trains in Germany that is really the feat of Epcot.
You heard it here first, folks. Chris, the true Disney magic is the model trains
Hmm.
at Disney.
Walt would be proud.
Yeah. Well, for my second pick, I am channeling the power of Mary Blair and taking it small with It's a Small World.
Wow, that's a great pick. Picking It's a Small World on a literal small world is just so literal. I'm ashamed I didn't think of it first.
Well, on the model, the It's a Small World attraction provides some of the kinetic movement seen in the model, with the children moving in a nice little circle behind the magnificently detailed facade that Mary Blair designed. Also, if you look closely, the topiaries are even formed into the different animals like they are at Disneyland today. Mary Blair was brought back to work with Walt Disney for the It's a Small World attraction at the 1964-65 New York World's Fair, and she created designs using collages of wallpaper clippings, plastic wrap, and acrylics, and she partnered with Rolly Crump to develop the different scenes in the attraction. When the attraction was brought to Disneyland in 1965, she created the distinctive kinetic facade and clock tower that we see today. It's just so iconic. And I know not everyone is the biggest fan of the song. And I'm sure just by talking about the attraction has got the song stuck in your head. So my apologies in advance. But I know Mary's design of the facade is just so iconic and just makes the attraction stand out and just so inviting.
Well, if you don't like It's a Small World, then I don't like you. Simple as that. I just don't need that kind of negativity in my life.
I know people are such haters. It's personally one of my favorite attractions. I just was always so into the different cultures represented and all the little dolls, and learning more about the attraction. That there is a special Mary Blair doll floating with a balloon. I just find that just so endearing and charming of an attraction.
Well, and when you know the history behind the song's creation, that it was made kind of in the wake of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and there really was this genuine need for something this inspiring to kind of bring people together. That has always put the song in a much different context for me. So I will always defend it.
Yeah, definitely. And one of my favorite facts that I remember being kind of young when I read this, I think I read this in the founder of the archive, the Disney Archives, Dave Smith, in one of his books, but that they got water from all the seven seas around the world. And on the opening day of the attraction at Disneyland, they poured them all together, and to kind of symbolize the world coming together in one place. That we are all children of the world, and I don't know. Like some days, if I'm feeling really sensitive, it brings a little tear to my eyes. It's just a sweet sentiment.
It is sweet. That would have been sweet to do a little representation of in the model, but unfortunately, almost all of the water represented in the model is made of shower glass, but we'll get into that a little bit later. For my final round, my third pick is the Matterhorn bobsleds.
Go big or go home, I guess.
We're literally going big on this last pick. It's the tallest structure on the model. The Matterhorn was notably difficult for the model makers to portray because the real attraction is a very odd shape and nothing looked quite right. The real attraction is 147 feet high, about 1/100th scale of its Swiss Alpine counterpart. It was based on the 1959 Disney live-action adventure film Third Man on the Mountain, and at least partially inspired by Walt and Lillian's own trip to Switzerland taken in the 1950s. Matterhorn bobsleds is also just such an important attraction. It's the first tubular steel roller coaster ever built. All steel roller coasters of today can trace their ancestry back through the Matterhorn. The ride system was designed by Bob Gurr, designer aficionado, discussed on last month's episode. Matterhorn was also one of Disneyland's very first e-ticket attractions, a designation denoting one of Disneyland's most exciting attractions that became an industry standard term. And another thing, the Matterhorn on the model has mountain climbers on it. And if you were to go down the Matterhorn, I imagine you would need skis, just like Walt had, that we have on display in Gallery 3. So, really there's always a way that we can get the skis involved in Collections Clash. I'm sure of it.
We're now really forcing the issue, huh? Well, that's such a great pick. And it really, if you're looking at the model, usually you look at the castle first, and then, of course, your eye naturally moves to the Matterhorn. And it is just such an iconic detail that is only at one Disney park in the world. So I think that's pretty special. Well, for my last pick, I'm going with one attraction on the model that was not built during Walt's lifetime: Space Mountain.
Ooh, solid pick. The most recent attraction to debut that's on the model.
Yeah, and Space Mountain best illustrates the creative brief for the model that Disneyland of Walt's imagination is not one period of time, but has elements of concepts that Walt envisioned or planned for Disneyland during his lifetime. So, named at the time, Spaceport in the model looks different than the now realized attraction, Space Mountain. The design on the model is based on Herb Ryman and John Hench's original concept, which was approved by Walt before he passed. The design included a track going outside the attraction building. The Space Mountain we know today at Disneyland and Magic Kingdom, they both don't have the design element of having part of the ride be outdoors. However, the version of Space Mountain at Disneyland Paris does take a more Jules Verne design, and the ride takes inspiration of the original idea and does have an outdoor element to the attraction. I've ridden it, and it was so exciting because I had long heard about the one Space Mountain that kind of was inspired by Walt Disney's original approval of the design. So it was a lot of fun. But fun fact, Space Mountain is the only attraction on the Disneyland model to open at Magic Kingdom in 1975 at Walt Disney World, prior to opening at Disneyland Park in 1977.
It's a great final pick and really is kind of the bridge between Walt's time and our time today. So I don't think you could have picked a better final pick, in my opinion. We realized that picking only 3 items to discuss for this month's theme is super difficult, so we've decided to include some honorable mentions that will not be up for voting. I had to talk about the sea monster in the model. That is one of my favorite elements that is a little bit more deep cut. You have to know where it is. You have to see it. You have to maybe have somebody tell you that it's there, but it's such a fun little part of the model. And it's all part of the submarine voyage in Tomorrowland that was themed after 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And of course, today is themed after Finding Nemo. The submarine voyage lagoon in Tomorrowland is the only negative space in the model. Remember, I was talking about shower glass earlier when I was talking about It's a Small World. All other bodies of water are on the surface and painted, but the submarine voyage lagoon is hollow and filled in with gel. This allows you to look through the water and see what's at the bottom, which is important for this particular honorable mention. There is a sea monster in the lagoon. Just look out of the reach of the submarine headlight underneath a monorail support beam. You'll see a little back flipper fin that's close to the surface. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Every model maker who worked on the model also wrote their name beneath a submarine in the lagoon. I haven't seen it personally, but I just believe it to be there. Personally, I just hope that there's an even tinier organ played by a tiny Captain Nemo inside. Dive, dive, dive.
That's such a fun one. And I always love pointing out that Easter egg when giving tours of the model, or people who just want to stand there all day and look. If I'm walking through the galleries, I always say, look down there for that wonderful sea monster. Well, for my honorable mention, I had to mention that there are 2 Walts in the model, and they are both with Diane. So we have 2 Walts and 2 Dianes, and one is in the castle entrance. So if you want to see it, you go down to the bottom of the model and kind of squat down to look down Main Street. If you're looking straight through Main Street, got to get eye level with it, but look through the castle and you'll see Walt holding a young Diane's hand. And so that's a really sweet one. The other one is in a red Autopia car. And Walt is also with Diane, and you'll know it's him because there's only one red car with two people in it. And this red car, of course, is Chris's Autopia car, seen in Gallery 9, that we chatted about last month as well. So they're really special little features on the model.
Yes, always love talking about Chris' Topia car. Another honorable mention, the Skyway buckets going from Tomorrowland to Fantasyland change at the Matterhorn. The buckets on the Fantasyland side are the park's original design from the 1950s. They're more circular buckets, while the buckets in Tomorrowland are the newer 1960s more square bucket design. This was done to represent the park's transition through time.
This is a great pick. I love looking at the little Skyway buckets through the Matterhorn. My last honorable mention is the orange groves on the model. So, a challenge Kerner faced with fitting the model to a pre designed space in the gallery. The actual Disneyland park is more triangular, while the model is forced to be circular. So, to accommodate the space, the model makers pushed out Tomorrowland, Fantasyland, and the Mine Train ride, and they couldn't completely move things around or it wouldn't resemble Disneyland anymore. So they ended up with extra space behind It's a Small World, where you'll see a little orange grove on the model. When they were trying to figure out how to fill the extra space, a Kerner designer pointed out that the land where Disneyland is located used to be orange groves, so they added the trees as a homage to the park's history. And most of the trees were handmade, and every tree was dipped in glue to prevent dust. Over the years, against our staff's best efforts, we've had a few accidents with phones or cameras dropping into the model. And I always love pointing out that one of the orange trees is now an orange bush.
I am just convinced that there is a cell phone slash camera magnet somewhere in the model. That's really funny. That you know the world's first orange bush, as you could say.
Well, and that's a good reminder. If you are visiting the Walt Disney Family Museum, keep your phones and cameras on the other side of our glass so no more accidents to harm our model in any way. Little PSA.
Yes, our model is full. We do not need any more attractions. Thank you. Well, that just about brings us to the end of our collections clash. Visit our Instagram stories today, Wednesday, January 4th, to vote on your favorite objects or email us at podcast@wdfmuseum.org to cast your votes or share your favorite features on the Disneyland model that we didn't even get to. There are so many. There are bound to be some people with some very interesting favorites out there. So please feel welcome to share those with us.
Thanks for tuning in to WDFM, the official Walt Disney Family Museum podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at WDF Museum for all the latest updates.
From both of us, please keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the vehicle at all times. Please watch your children, manténganse alejado de las puertas, and keep moving forward.
Goodbye.
Bye.